Come on. There it is. Bam.
This is Andy Stumpf, and you are watching the Break It Down show.
Is that a collection of throwing knives behind your head?
I mean, all knives can be thrown. Should they, though, is the question. No, so those are Montana Knife Company. Those are based off the V24. They call that the V24 dagger, but they built that off of one of the historic daggers, I think from World War II or World War I. So, yeah, I mean, long way to answer. Yes, I suppose you could huck that at somebody.
Yeah. It's when you go to a party and someone's like, Andy, what do you do? What do you say?
I tell them I own a coffee shop. It's the easiest answer that I have come up with, that we can then talk about coffee, with most people share in common, and we can avoid anything else about my background, and it just makes the evening better.
Yeah. It's funny that we have to go to these lengths to do these things. It can be that we sidetrack the whole evening, right? And then we end up not having an evening that we necessarily enjoy, because now we're the entertainment in a lot of cases. I get why you do that.
It's a combination of that, and quite frankly, for better or worse, and I don't know why this is the case, it can make some people a little bit uncomfortable. That also depends on, the audience that you may be in, or the social circle that you might be around. Not everybody is as pro-military as everybody else is. Everybody's free to their beliefs. And so it's just, it's just a center of the road answer. And quite frankly, I would prefer to spend my time with people talking about them and their experiences, as opposed to the previous career that I had. Not that I'm not proud of it, but by any stretch, but I just find that's an easier way to engage in more of a back and forth conversation, and then instead of a question heavy conversation.
Yeah. And there's something to be said for taking the Letterman jacket off and putting it in the closet and let it be there, but not needing to put it on. It's fine every now and then, but yeah, there's other things that we're into now, right? Like, it's not just war. Although it's always interesting to talk about what we think about these things.
Sure. Yeah, I'm game.
What did you learn about coffee along the way?
Well, I learned that I was very late to the game. I didn't have my first cup of coffee until I was 27 years old. A buddy of mine, while we were overseas, slid me a gateway drug, which was an iced mocha, which was utterly delicious and kept me up for about 24 hours. I had a little bit of coffee when I was younger. I had a sip of my mother's coffee, and I swear the image, it just sticks. It's from one of the red Folgers cans that you and I will remember, but many others may not.
Yeah.
And now that I know a little bit about coffee, I think she left it on the stove for about 3 days and just burnt the ever-living piss out of it. So I took a sip. I'm like, this is the most disgusting thing I've ever had up to my, this point in my life. And then just kind of shelved it. And I would look at guys overseas like, why are you hovering over this inanimate object that slowly drips out this brown juice that you guys then reanimate and come back to life? And then so, I started drinking coffee at 27. That was my gateway drug. That's all I could have for a long period of time. Then you start having kids, and then you can pour espresso directly into your face, and it still just has no impact whatsoever.
No, none.
Yeah. Now, being in the coffee business, wow. The biggest thing I've learned is it's way more complex than I would have thought it could possibly be. Yeah. It's to describe it to people, because most people know somebody in their life who is a wine nerd. Like, they full on love like the sommelier movies and the tasting notes and the ambiance and all the accessories. Coffee is exactly the same, maybe even taken to the next level by other people. So passionate group of people. It's well beyond my mother's Folgers coffee. We'll put it like that. Far more complicated.
Yeah. That's a great note, man. It's funny. So I got to the coffee game late too. But I drank the shit out of Rippets because, I never chewed. I've chewed a couple of times in my life, but it just spins me out. I vomit and I'm like, oh God, why did I do that? And then I forget. And 7 years later, I do it again. And I've broken that cycle, but it's true. Like, hey, so if you all are going to go out, I have to go out with you. Like, I'm no good on the camp, the way I collect the things I do. So I'm going to go out with you guys. So if I come back from a patrol, I'm worn out, I'm devastated, I got to go out and write. I got to get all my stuff done. I got to recover. And then the lieutenant or whoever comes up and say, hey, Pete, we're going to go out again. Well, then you jam a dip in, you rip it, and you drink whatever it is, and then you go out and do it. And everybody has to have some kind of stimulant to make you be able to push through that fatigue. And I know you've seen, like, I'll get tired enough that I'm hallucinating and I'm seeing them waving at people that don't exist. I'm still able to function somehow, but if not coffee, you have to have something.
Yeah, I mean, it got to the point at some of the commands where they would just start issuing you stay awake pills, and it's the same thing. You feel like you want to charge a 50 cal for about an hour. Then you have, the pretty robust come down from that on the other side. And for me, it would be a stomach ache for 2 days. It would disrupt my ability to eat. And yeah, you might be awake, but it's exactly what you're saying. You're awake, but I think I would have the functional IQ of somebody who was just hammered, like probably like maybe 3 times the legal limit, like a nice 0.24, just trying to make some decisions. So yeah, I'm awake. And honestly, that's why they push people so hard in training. Like I hallucinated while we were in SEAL training in Hell Week. On about the 3rd day, most people start to, and so it's good. I was about to say, it's good to experience those things. Let's go ahead and preface that with, if you're going to have an occupation that may require you to operate at that level, I don't think, like the coffee shop employees I have, we don't go to the hallucination stage. Now, we can talk about that if they have questions, but I don't force them to make macchiatos while they've been up for 72 hours.
This is the important thing. There's a lot of leadership things that are great from the SEAL community or from the spy, whatever it is. But you guys don't need to stack on the conference store. You don't need to do simunitions. You don't need to, no. It's just, so we take this leadership stuff and yes, there's things to glean from us, but so much of it is just, it doesn't belong to the civilian world. And there's no reason to stay for 72 hours straight and then push for another day. I mean, it just doesn't, you don't need to do that in the regular world.
I agree. It would be hard to find an argument where that would be the case. And if your job is asking that of you, please reach out to me because I'm fascinated to know what it is you do for a living if you're in the civilian world.
Yeah. Hey, so we have Andy here talking about his book. So let me get this book up here on the screen so y'all can see it here. It's called Drownproof. I love this word. So I came to the military. I could swim. I've been a lifeguard and everything. And so they'd say, we're going to make you drownproof, and then you get in the pool. And some people really needed lessons on how to swim. And it's funny, at least in the Army, they don't say, can anybody swim? They just like, all right, we're going to do drownproofing. And I'm like, drownproofing? How can you drownproof somebody? Like how could you do these things? And then the training is very interesting. So everybody watching, like this in the Army version of it, you stand in what they call the shallow end. And if you can swim, you're like, there's no, it's just all the pool. We just get in wherever. And so you go through this exercise where some people are their first time ever having clothes on in a pool and they're just petrified. I'm talking about the Army version. But drownproofing in general, it doesn't drownproof you. It's usually a horrible experience if you've never done it. And it's just the oddest training I think I ever participated in the Army, especially because I could swim. And so like, I don't mind sinking down because I know I'm going to inflate my shirt or I'm going to do whatever because I can swim. But if you can't swim, man, it's crazy. And then you take that and push that out to life where you're forced to do these things that are so outside your norm and you have to rise up to it. I mean, among the things you have to do, and I'll shut up here in a second, everybody, but if you have to jump off a high dive, which is just a 3-meter board, in the diving world, it's like, oh, that's nothing, right? But if you're jumping off that in your clothes, you've never done this in your life, and you have to save yourself, that might be the hardest thing anybody ever does in their life in terms of physically scary. I have to do this. Certainly harder than a speech.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even on the Navy side, so my exposure to what you're talking about, people in a pool clothed for the first time, like Navy boot camp, everybody does the same thing. They go on the platform, they jump off. Are you required to be able to swim in the Army? Because as you were telling me that portion of the story, really, I think you are. I don't even know actually in the Navy. Maybe now. I think you're required to be able to float, which actually is very different things because they teach you ways like you can inflate your pants and stuff like that. Right. Floating and swimming are very different. So I know exactly what you're talking about with the exposure at boot camp that happened. By the time you get to SEAL training, you know how to swim. And yeah, drownproofing is A, impossible, and B, the evolution itself in BUDS has nothing to do with drownproofing. It's just they start adding control measures. Like first you practice, and for people like the full evolution is you have your arms bound behind your back, your feet are bound together. You bob up and down for an hour, which on the outset or the outside people are like, oh my God, that seems horrible. But if you actually can relax and control your heart rate and your breathing, it's completely peaceful because you can only hear the instructor yelling at you as your head is above water, getting a gasp of air. And the rest of it, you're just like, oh, this is amazing. Then you travel down the pool, you basically swim with your hands tied behind your back and your feet together for 100 meters, I believe it's down and back. Then you start bobbing again, you grab a mask with your teeth, you do a front flip. And so like all these other things, but you start with, you just hold your hands behind your back and your feet aren't together. So it's not like they just ambush you with this. But you're not drown proof. It's just adding on requirements in a high stress environment because when you don't get the choice to breathe when you want to, that increases stress. And they're watching what you can do. Like, can you follow procedure regardless of what the world around it is asking of you or how it's making you feel? And that's actually what the evolution is about. Because at the end of that, I wish I could say there weren't SEALs that have drowned but there are recent examples of 2 in the Middle East that drowned within the last few years. A SEAL drowned in Afghanistan in a river. So it certainly doesn't make you drown proof. I'm not aware of anything that does, other than, I suppose, never going in or near the water. I guess that would be the only way to be drown proof.
It is the most misnamed thing ever.
It is.
Like,
yeah, it has nothing to
sure.
do with being able to be actually not drownable.
Yeah. And then the other thing about, you mentioned that recently some SEALs have drowned, and you might drown in training doing any of these things, but you have someone there to recover you. And we're not even talking about that. But we had those 2 dudes. I think the last time I heard about the story, one SEAL fell in for whatever reason, and the other one jumped in after to save him, and then you lose both of them. And if you ever wanted to have a scenario where you can save someone, it's that, because a lifeguard probably is going to be like, you can't go in after that person, right? That's different with the SEAL world, and decidedly not drown proof. And depending on how heavy you are, it's a dangerous thing that you guys have to just in everybody. It's dangerous to do this kind of work, but to know that
The
there's
water
a
is
buddy coming.
Yeah, the water is the most unforgiving. Well, I was going to say that, but I think the jungle is a close tie, because the jungle is dangerous in a different way. But the water, well, let's just put it this way: there's more water than there is jungle, though, right? 70% of the Earth's surface is covered in water. It's really, really unforgiving, and things go bad really, really quickly. I didn't know either of those individuals, but as you described it, is my understanding as well. They were doing a VBSS, or a visit board search and seizure, in the Persian Gulf, and one of them was climbing. There is some contention, and I don't know if they have released or completed the investigation as to whether or not they tested their equipment to be neutrally buoyant, which is, if you're going to carry a lot of stuff, you can add flotation or have flotation accessible. Right. So if you do go into the water, you can have positive flotation, or sometimes you don't have positive flotation. You have things that you need to actuate. You need to train with that stuff, though. It takes time. So there was a report that they may have skirted some of those currencies and competencies. So by the first person entering the water, obviously the person that followed him in was by choice. It was not by accident. And the minimum fighting force in the SEAL community is 2. So I think it speaks to the level of training. And then also, more than anything, though, the level of care that you have for the people that you were out there with. That person may well have known that they could have been jumping to their death by trying to save him. Yeah. But, neither of them, to my understanding, were ever seen again. So, pulled into the abyss very, very quickly. It's, like you said, it's a dangerous job. And in that environment, one mistake, maybe not even a large mistake, can cost you your life.
Yeah, if you start with the notion that the ocean will kill you and that you're insignificant in that thing. I mean, there's this story of this guy. This is a real thing that happened. He fell off a luxury kind of cruise between Australia and Indonesia, somewhere out in there. And no one knew he fell off. And he's just bobbing, floating, and just a coconut on the water. Because your head, that's all you have above the water. And so he treaded. And finally, the ship he was on turned around, not the ship, it was like a boat. And it turned around and came back for him. And I'm saying a boat, like, it's bigger than, it's not like a rowboat, everybody, but
it's like an oil tanker boat.
This was a luxury thing, so it was more like a party cruise. Yeah, and so he had fallen over.
So somewhere in between the two.
Yeah, somewhere in between. and when they came back, they retraced their steps, and by some miracle, were able to find him. And he was completely gassed, and then seeing them and having the hope, he used a lot of his energy and had run out and was like, "Oh, I'm going to die as they're rescuing me," but they got him. I mean,
you would not want to do best out of 3 on that. The odds of being able to do a U-turn and find somebody in the ocean, even on a small vessel. Yeah. I mean, that person probably should go play the lottery and head to Vegas in the same day.
Yeah. So you write the book. A lot of SEALs, at least let's say 15 years ago, it was the silent warrior kind of thing. But a lot more of these books are coming out now, and I love it, because we do need to write these stories. Are we past the silent warrior thing, or is that still how important is that today? That's what I'm asking you.
So, I mean, I can only speak for myself. I can't speak for the community, so I can give you my answer on that. But looking back on even the world that I came into it, the silent warrior thing was actually never true. One of the first books I got my hands on was Rogue Warrior by Dick Marcinko, the founder of SEAL Team 6. But before that, I mean, in my era, so I joined the military in 1996. In my era of young men who were pursuing the SEAL pipeline, there's a very, very common book that almost all of us have read. And we went to the library and we found it. It was called Men with Green Faces. And it was specifically about SEALs in Vietnam. So how were we able to find that book? Well, because the silent warrior mentality and ethos, which I completely agree with, inside of the boundaries that you can never put people at risk. You should never expose TTPs, which means tactics, techniques, and procedures. Never reveal, the means and ways by which we do the things that we do. I wouldn't give away the farm on anything, sensitive when it comes to training, leaving surprises for people as they want to go through the training pipeline themselves, so it's still as efficacious as it has been. But other than that, how are we supposed to inspire the next generation of people like I was inspired by the previous generation if there isn't some lineage and ability to tell those stories? So I believe that everybody has earned the right to do what they want to with their experiences. And there are some people who want to write books that are the antithesis of everything that I just described when it comes to the TTPs, whatever. You want to write fiction books, whatever. So the community has the right to judge you accordingly as an individual or as a whole if anybody wants to write those books. So be responsible for the choices that you make. For me, my goal in this, it's not entertainment, right? There's not a single war story in that book. It's largely the mistakes I made while I was in and what I learned from those and the tools that I developed along the way and how people can apply them outside of that military setting. But there is nothing in that book that even fringes upon sensitive in nature on how we do our job, where we come from, modern day tactics. It's just my best attempt to take experiences that I had that most people won't have access to. Statistically, almost nobody will have the experiences that you and I did. But how do we take those experiences and at least put them into something that can impact more than just my life? Because my experiences were wildly impactful for me. And if I just take them to my grave, I mean, cool, right? I mean, it may have an impact on my life, but why try to limit that? Why not try to take that and help as many people as possible by exposing them to those lessons? And, and again, to the silent professional or the silent warrior thing, there were also less modes and mechanisms for people to talk about their experiences. There was no internet. There was no podcast. There, the content world that we live in now didn't exist then. But it is my hypothesis that had it existed, guess what guys would have probably done? The exact same thing that the modern day soldiers are doing now. That's my guess. I have no data to support that except for a study that I completely made up to support my own point.
There you go. I put the link up for a Clear Hot podcast. Everybody go check that out.
Awesome.
Sure. It's on YouTube, among other places. Yeah, I'm okay with TTPs if they're commonly known. Like there's stuff in movies that
and broadly. You can talk about very sensitive stuff in super broad terms that people wouldn't even know that you're talking about something sensitive. And that to me is the responsibility of the person who is talking about it. Like if you step over that line and you say something you're not supposed to, especially on a medium like this, then you need to be held accountable for that. So think through what you're going to say, realize where the lines are. But I mean, even I was never read into anything incredibly sensitive, but I could talk around and through all of those issues and people would not even know that I'm bouncing up against those guardrails that might have levels of sensitivity.
Yeah. People are like, "Oh, I don't want to make you see anything classified." It's like, no, that's not your job. That's my job. You're never going to even know. And you're right. Like, even if I talk about something that I was read on for, most of it is just a bunch of nonsense. Anyhow, you're like, this is read on. Okay, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
But and a lot of the stuff that I did was classified in that moment or in that era, and then the units.
Oh yeah, we're dated for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of my reports were unclassed because it was more helpful to get it out to more. Now, people would try to classify them, and I'm like, show me what's classified in here. And they're like, because I wrote it to be unclassed. It's just more of a report as opposed to I saw bad guy X. Now, that stuff, of course, that stays in the right channel and everything. It's interesting, the experiences when a counterintelligence dude shows up, especially if we were talking this off mic, like if someone's like, Pete, go out and help SEAL team next and go help those guys. I'm like, oh, here's what I've learned. And this is what I write in my book. Like, you don't just show up. You have to be like, who's the SEAL commander locally? Does he understand that the boss is, because we'll all comply, but if I just show up, I haven't earned my way on any patrol. You guys don't know who I am. There's no badge I can wear. You're like, who are you? Pete, wait, what are you doing? And I have to now figure out how to explain that. And I know how to do that because I've done it enough times that I know how to work within your guys' world. But even then, still takes me a couple of weeks for you guys to understand what I'm doing. And the biggest thing that I can say that I would do with you all is say, I'm going to, collect intel and I'm going to write all the reports. If you guys have intel reports to write, give them to me. I'll write them. You guys don't need to worry about that. And I'll just handle all of that. And so I would write a lot, but I would also go out and I don't complain. Here's the thing you don't do in a combat patrol. Everybody. This is just a simple thing. if it's hot outside, you don't say, Jesus fucking Christ, it's hot. We all know that it's hot. We all know that it sucks. So you shut your fucking mouth and you do your job. And when it's time for you to do your specific job, in my case, asking questions, you better be goddamn good at it. Or being trained and learning how to, because we don't mind mentoring, but that lesson, there's no real book for that on how to, like, hey, if Pete shows up, how does the SEAL team put Pete to work in a way that makes sense? And we all have to figure it out in real time. I like to close those gaps, those seams.
Yeah, what you're describing has large parallels to the civilian world too. I mean, you got to remember, so a SEAL team deployed overseas, there's a minimum of years of training for those
Yeah.
people individually and then together to even arrive there. And in that time, they become very close. It is a very small element in comparison to like a aircraft carrier that is a small floating city. We're talking like 16 guys, you know. So they all know each other. And then when you get paired up with people that you don't know, there's that natural time period of like, who is this person? Yeah, I understand what your job is supposed to be, but we don't know you, right? You have to kind of establish your bona fides and understand how you're going to work well together. Anybody who's ever done a first day on a job, guess what? You're right into that mix itself. Or was you're promoted into a leadership position in a job that you already, an organization that you are already inside of now. Maybe you're responsible for a different business tranche. It happens all the time. And again, understanding that the long-term success in that is largely going to be predicated on your ability to facilitate relationships with it you can then build and work from can really help people. And the best advice I have for people is, use the tools that you were given in the appropriate ratio. So you got 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth. So start slow, look around a little bit, ask some questions, listen to the answers, and then it'll start helping you find out where the gears are going to mesh up and how you can help them kind of align a little bit better.
We both grew up in the same area. I mean, roughly, Northern California. And around the same time, I joined the military. I was 24 in 94, and that's why I joined. Where did you grow up specifically?
Santa Cruz.
Santa Cruz. God, that's great. My dad lives in Capitola. He was the mayor. And,
very familiar. Very familiar.
Yeah. So we know the same people. It's incredible. Yeah. How often do you go back?
I haven't been back. Well, my dad was the last remaining remnants of our family that was there. My mom passed in 2010. And sporadically after that, I went back and then moved up here to Montana, where I live now. I've lived here, I think, somewhere, it's either 8 or 9 years, long enough that I no longer care or keep track anymore. So at some point, I'll just start saying 10. And then about a year after that, I'll start saying 20. So the locals kind of accept me. But he has moved up here since. So I actually haven't had a chance to go back to Santa Cruz in years because the guy I used to go back and see is literally 800 yards from where I live.
Yeah. What a cool time to be in Santa Cruz, though. You guys, I mean, maybe it isn't relevant anymore, but it's for sure as hell relevant to you all. That movie Lost Boys.
Yes.
Santa Cruz is a small town, and they still show that like a public thing all the time because it's about that place. It's funny.
Yeah, right at the boardwalk facility where it's like essentially an amusement park. But yeah, there's that bridge that spans. I know people would probably call it a river. I am not sure it meets the criteria of being a river. It's more like polluted water that kind of makes its way to the ocean when there's some rain.
Yeah.
But yes, that's where they filmed the sequence where they dropped through and went into the fog.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. And to this day, they still do like put a big sheet up and show it everybody down there. And
I'm sure they do. Yeah, I'm sure they do.
So go ahead.
I said, I'm sure they do.
Yeah. Montana is interesting. I've got family up there. They're from Missoula. We had a place up on Flathead. But I got to go there. It was incredible. But yeah, you're from California. So when do you actually get to be from Montana? Not for you, but from them. When did they let you be there?
Oh, it depends on who you ask. I've heard 5 years. I've heard 10. I've heard 5th generation, to which you look at the person and go, what? Like, that's not possible. I don't know. It's one of those things. There is some animosity there. And it came out a lot during COVID. People are like, oh man, the Californians are coming here. And I had to remind people, you understand that they're leaving California because they don't like the environment of California, right? So they're coming to a place that aligns with their beliefs and the way they want to live their life. So it's not the ones that are moving here that I think you need to worry about. It might be the ones that are staying there that are trying to influence your politics indirectly.
This is a very local Montana thing. I don't know how far the circle goes out, but around Missoula, they have these things called California dream homes. And it's when someone from California buys a hunk of land and starts building a house and gets about halfway and they're like, fuck, and I'm out of money. And so it never gets finished. And so it's this, essentially a modern ruin. And then maybe someone comes along the buy, but they call that a California dream home. I think it's hilarious that they have a name for that kind of, I'm going to go out to Montana and live big. Like, that turns out, no, I'm not. I'm going to get divorced and be bankrupt.
Yeah. No, they exist up here too. There are, and surprisingly enough, we're not talking entry-level homes. There is a property that I'm aware of that encompasses an entire island. And if anybody has $72 million that's just laying around, you can buy this island, which is a California dream home for sure, completely finished on the outside. It looks amazing, like this Italian villa, not finished at all on the inside. So if you have the $72 million to put down, you're going to have a few more bucks you need to spend to finish the thing off.
Yeah, it's a funny thing. And you're right, like not just the California, like negative California attitude from the Montana folks. These are independent people, and they enjoy your failure in their world. They treasure it. It's kind of funny.
Well, that on the other side of that coin, though, what I will say is this: they are also the nicest, most willing to drop whatever it is that they're doing and help out their neighbor people as well. And quite frankly, though, I knew people like that in California as well, right? It's amazing what happens when you treat people with respect. You treat them like a human being. You help other people that need help. And the next thing you know, you're on the side of the road and whatever, you're switching out a tire and you got people blocking traffic for you and helping you out. And the next thing you know, you got like a race car, pit crew, and you're like, son of a bitch. These people are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's true everywhere. Everywhere you go. I got to meet a lot of the local people wherever we all went to go do crazy stuff. And I let people be great. Even warlords. My job is to meet those guys and to understand them and then try to introduce them and chill things out. But if I allowed that guy who was black marketing gas to just like, hey, I know you're just trying to survive black marketing gas. I don't know where the money goes, but today, right now, I don't care about that. How do I let you be you so that we can figure out how to fix another problem? And that allowed me to meet people that no one else could meet, because then the locals trusted me and they would introduce me within their local sphere. Because it's not the first guy I meet, it's the third guy that I meet that's going to make a big difference. But you have to learn how to be a good guest. You have to learn how to say, hey, I need help with this. You have to learn how to say, I don't know everything about folks from Montana. I know a lot, but teach me about this. And then when you do that and allow them to know their area, allow them to be smart, allow them to teach you, and they warm up to you real fast. And you can get going a lot faster than trying to be the person who knows everything.
I couldn't agree more. I think that applies just about everywhere in life.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. All right. So Drownproof and your lessons for life.
Mm-hmm.
What, why this book? Why now? There's a lot of books with seal tridents on them, let's get it out there. But why this?
There's no trident on that one. Trust me. And that was not by accident. We kind of touched on it a little bit. I've thought the longer that I've been out, the more times I have been asked about the experiences that I had. Mm-hmm. The most common thing that I will get with that is this expression of, man, that sounds so unbelievable. I wish I could have had those experiences, or I'll never be able to have that type of experience.
Yeah.
Which, like I said, statistically, you're correct. Very few people are dumb enough to go down the pipeline that I wanted to go down. And most of the experiences had a medium to medium high level of pain associated with them, both physical and mental. So it's probably a good thing that most people don't go down those pipelines. And for whatever reason, for better or worse, coming from one of those backgrounds, people sometimes will put you up on a pedestal. And I don't know any other way to say it. And I'm not saying that negatively, but they will listen to you more than they should. Or they'll let you get away with things more than they would let somebody else get away with those things. Or it'll open doors to opportunities that you might not be qualified to actually walk through the door and attempt, which has a long-term negative consequence to anybody who may attempt to follow you, because that door will shut for everybody after you if you underperform. And after getting those questions enough time and thinking about my own life and the experiences and the impact that those lessons had to me, and having a show of my own where on Fridays I simply just answer Q&A, because I ran out of time emailing people backwards. In my head, I was like, okay, here's what I'll do. I can talk faster than I can type, and I can get this stuff out there. And so what I'll do is if I start answering these questions, they'll stop coming, which is not what happened by any stretch of the imagination. The opposite happens. The volume increased. And I just started recognizing they all fall. There's like maybe a dozen major buckets. There's some outliers, but a lot of them refine down to a similar message or a similar question, I should say. And a lot of the answers that I'll give are based off of things that I wrote about in the book. How do you do this? How do you set a goal? Once you set a goal, how do you accomplish a goal? How do you keep going when things suck? You come from a background, at least for a portion of time in your life, where almost everybody who attempted it quit because it was so painful. Well, how did you do that? Is there something that I could learn from that? Is there a way that I could do that without having to have that experience? And the answer to all those questions is yes. And so that's where the book idea came from. It's just my best attempt to take those experiences, to take those lessons. And at the end of the day, I mean, I just would like to leave the world a fraction of a percentage better than the one that I came into. And I can't think of a better way to do that, especially when people are asking questions about these things, than to try to get those tools into as many hands as possible. And the tools don't solve any problems. It's another thing I always say is none of the things I talk about or write about are going to do the hard work for you. And I'm sorry that at the end of the day, success is going to require hard work. I know we live in a hack-based society and people want to hack everything, but everything that I've ever had in my life that comes to me or that remains valuable to me in my life, whether this is the relationship with my wife and children or anything I've accomplished professionally, it's the redheaded stepchild of hard work. It's the long-term consequence of that. These tools can help you be more efficient. They can help you reframe the way you think about goals that make it more digestible. They don't make it any easier, and the work is still going to have to be done every single day.
It's interesting. I think about some of the most important moments in my career, and this is not like Pete's, like, here I am kind of thing, but it can be the small things. So I show up, maybe it was SEAL Team 5, I forget what it was, but they were in Missoula and they were packing up and leaving. And so we're new to the area, so we're introducing ourselves to resident units. And so we get onto the little compound, which, by the way, already hard to do. Took some bona fides to get in. I didn't have that. And we get there and we're talking to, I guess it was their chief of the team. And he looks at me and he's like, I know you. And I'm like, well, you don't know me. Like, nobody knows me. I've been out for a little while. You don't know me. There's no way. And he's like, no, I know. And so we did the dance. And he's like, we're here. And I said, I was at Huachuca. That's really, Huachuca is where they teach spy skills. And he goes, that's where it is. I went to CIFSO and you taught CIFSO and you know your shit. And I was like, holy fuck, I did teach CIFSO. And because again, there's no badge. There's no badge to say, hey, black belt counterintelligence guy. And that, I don't even remember his name, but I had been there. I had played a role for him. And when you play a role in our world, like you and I have an interaction, I'm playing the mayor and I'm like, all right, here's what I want you to do next time. And I'm just trying to get you a little bit better every day. I'm also gathering all of your tools. So like, oh, you did this. This was great. I'd never thought about it. And so I'm getting better and better all the time because I knew this guy, because he'd interacted with me for 3 weeks, if that course was even that long, in Arizona back in the 90s. Now we're in the 2004 timeframe. He's like, these guys know what they're doing because Pete's here. And he gave us access to Johnny Walker. He became our interpreter for a little while. We understood that when you guys wanted it back, you'd take him back. But that taught me, because you don't learn this in the spy world. You don't learn this in counterintelligence. You don't learn to be hard ass. You don't learn to push through. And just that access temporarily with the SEALs taught me how to relate to you guys, how I could help you guys, how to work at your guys' level and where the bar was. And it's high, right? But that one thing, there's no path for that. And so a book like what we're talking about here can shrink that path and be like, look, you have to understand, if you're going to be a combat spy like I was, you can't just be the strategic guy who wears a suit and goes to parties. You've got to be someone who can sit with the snake eaters and the badasses, do your job, perform at their level, and be respected. There's no reliable journey to happen to meet a chief somewhere and then happen to see him 8 years later or whatever it was. That's just so improbable. And so those lessons that you can transfer like that, I think it is invaluable if you're in a mind where you can withstand all of the twists and turns, because my career sucked for a lot of the times. If you're sitting in a garrison environment doing nothing and you feel like a thoroughbred and around a bunch of ponies, it's shitty. And that was a lot of my experience. But then it all paid off in that one meeting, and then it just changed everything for me.
Yeah, I mean, everything you're talking about, that journey, and even though the fact that there is no recipe to get from A to B, it's quality hard work over time and sustained effort over time that is going to get you down that path. And I see a lot of people who they can write out a goal, They can actually even lay out the steps that they probably need to take, both in a macro sense and a micro sense. And then before they actually start taking any steps, the first thing that they're doing is looking for a shortcut, because hard work sucks. It takes time. And long-term success is often micro success that you don't even realize you're having in the moment. You're like, wow, I've just been smashing my head against the wall for the last week, but you don't realize you've been building the momentum you need to break through whatever that wall is the next time you take a swing at it. You can't hack your way through hard work.
How do you get through the lessons? Because the thing I often say is, if you're not making mistakes, you're making the first mistake. You have to accept that you're not doing enough. You're not meeting the standard enough. You can't be so hard on yourself you can't succeed, but you have to also accept combat is a complex thing, and you can't reliably go to A to B all the time. And sometimes you just have to sit down, shut up, and do something that's the antithesis of what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. I mean, I did. So when I laid out the steps in the book, I didn't have like an A to B. It kind of came together a little bit. I mean, the first chapter of the book is more about how you view yourself, because you could have all the tools in the world, but if you are still in the headspace where you're the victim of your life instead of the author of it, it doesn't really matter, right? And I was at that space when I was a young man, and I think most adults have the ability to transition, and they start taking agency and ownership over their life and the outcome. And I'll be the first person to say this: you can't control what happens to you in your life, but you have 100% control over how you respond to it, how you process it, how you work through it, all of those things. And that's where you need to focus your effort. But when I was a younger man, it wasn't the case. I was just pointing fingers. Well, I only did that because this person did this. And I only did that because, well, I was the new guy. Who am I to sit here and say, oh, we shouldn't be doing this? Because, in my own mind, I'm the most junior person working with my heroes, junior by rank, junior by time, junior by experience, all of these things. Yeah. And the reality is that's a dangerous headspace, because you're completely malleable and manipulatable to somebody who has all those things that you don't have. And that shift where you take agency, and then regardless of who you may be around, the 5 W's that they may have about their life, it doesn't even matter anymore, because we all kind of inherently know when things are not right or things are going wrong, and corrective action needs to be taken. But if you don't think of yourself as a leader, which is essentially what I'm talking about, you're never going to step up and lead. You're always going to be waiting for somebody else to do that. So the first chapter is about that, and then just starting to layer in tools on top of that, whether it's chunking your goals, trying to figure out ways where you're allocating your time on things that you are concerned about versus things you actually have control over, which every time I do that exercise, I'm like, oh, not really doing great here. Maybe I should worry a little bit less about this. I do it once a year. I'll do like, son of a bitch. You'd think I'd have better results after having done this many times. And then also, like, in that too, I talk about the after action process, which I think is essential. And, I've seen plenty of military movies, and it's so funny to me the things they leave out. Like, I've never seen a 72-hour planning cycle where we argue about the font we're going to use on PowerPoint. I haven't seen that in a movie yet. Or the vicious debriefs. And I don't mean like mean, but I mean to the bone, to the points that matter, where we spend a microsecond talking about what we did right, and the rest of the time talking about either what we saw the enemy doing and what we need to respond to, or what we did wrong.
Yes.
And it's tough because you get called out in front of your peers. But if you never do an after action, if you never really have a tangible, like, okay, I have this goal, I think I'm getting close, or maybe I'm halfway, or maybe I'm just going to do this every quarter. How am I actually doing? Let's be honest. Let's get some feedback. Then you're just lying to yourself, right? You're like, I think I'm doing good. Feel like I have momentum. Well, let's just put that against something that's a little bit more black and white. So after action is in there as well too. I mean, everything from what I consider a leader to be, leadership characteristics, leadership qualities, all of which can be taught and refined, regardless of who you are outside of it. Because people ask me all the time, are leaders born, or can they be taught? And the answer is yes. Not everybody is the same. I'm sorry. There's a glass ceiling to everybody. Like, I'm never going to play in the NBA. I'm 6 foot tall, 205 pounds, and I cannot make a jump shot to save my life. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. And, it's leadership, regardless of where you start off, you can get better. If you have a glass ceiling, which we all do, get as close to it, start smacking your head against that glass ceiling. So you do come out of the box with some capability, but you can take whatever you have. And this is like true of it, from physical capability to endurance to resistance to resilience to all of those things. And so it's a layer of all of those. And mostly in the book, through the lens of where I made the mistake, where the lesson became very concrete, or situations. What I tried to do is give situations in my life outside of the military where I took a tool that had been refined while in the military and applied it to civilian life, which is where I think the real the real juice is taking those experiences that most people don't tangibly have because they weren't in the military, but showing them like, listen, this works for you too. It might even work better because we're not talking about staying alive or dying in the civilian world most of the time. And if it works in that environment, guess what? There's probably a reason why the military uses it. So let's give it a look and let's see if it applies to the situation you're in.
There's a lot of reframing things that we sort of pick up along the way. I think it's just adults, but especially in our world where you have to perform at this high level and push past your normal things, and you do hit walls or a glass ceiling, and you're like, what do I do about this ceiling? And these are unsolvable problems when you start there. You have a quote in your book talking about how giving your kid an access to a phone is giving the world access to your kid, right? And so it's a different way.
So
of
many people, yeah, so many people say that though. I got to give my kids a phone because I want them to see the world around them and be in contact with their social circle. And I always remind parents, like, listen, what you just said is true, but you are giving the world and everybody else who is in that world, who may not feel the same way you do about your child, access to your child. And most of the time they go, oh, yeah, we're going to hold off on that for a bit.
Yeah. And so the same thing, like you mentioned glass ceiling. I had this conversation with someone the other day and they're like, I'm just trying to put my foot through the door. And so sometimes you can say, and again, it's like you're in charge of this stuff. We have a lot more agency, especially if we demand it. And look, I might overdo my agency, but I can back off from that. So you're telling me there's a glass ceiling. Well, where's the staircase?
Mhm.
Well, I thought about that,
Or the foot through the door. Like, good dude, go look through the window.
Go
is there
through
another door?
How about just build your own door and just open it, or whatever it is, right? Like just do this thing and find, you don't have to go through the object every single time. And I love the concept when I talk about like my time working with the teams or the Green Beret. And I don't want to act like I was like there with everybody, but I had a lot of exposure. There is a process to learning how to swim with all of these sharks. Everybody's an alpha, everybody's a leader, but we all figure out how to lead in our own way, not do something that somebody else is already doing so that I can have my skill here or whatever it is. And we make this melange that works. And like how I love it, like when it all locks in and I'm not competing, I'm complementing. Man, that's such a magic place to get to. And I struggle to explain what that's like when you see it. And even in war, when I've seen it, it's rare. It's ethereal. Someone gets hurt, someone goes on break, it falls apart, these changes happen all the time. But when you find that moment when it's less competitive and it's more like you're collaborative, it's magic.
I agree. And I think a lot of that is the mechanism of just the fact that they are very small individual units where you don't have two people that can be focusing on the same job. You're just not going to get that accomplished. I think, when you start layering in bureaucracy and headcount, I think that gets actually a lot harder because a lot of times people are like, I don't actually know what my job is, but I see this guy doing this over here and he seems to get rewarded for it. So maybe I'll do a little bit of that too.
Man, a lot of my self-taskings were, well, nobody does that. And I'm like, oh, well, then I'll go do that, whatever that thing is, because there's always something to do. And if the boss is saying, I use this example, again, turning a phrase, I can't just look for a needle in a haystack. If they're trying to hide from us, if they're going to blow the base up on the 14th, I may or may not find out about that. Odds are I'm not. And so I can look for a needle in a haystack the whole year, or I can just go one field over and just go a field of needles and just bring that back to the team or to the boss or whoever and go, look, if you don't like these needles, I'll find new stuff. But if I'm giving you things you need, then I'm doing my job. I'm augmenting where you guys are at. And by all means, fine tune me on the battlefield where you need me to be. But that's when I know I'm competing and I'm doing something that's what I'm alphaing. I'm going to go find this stuff out for you guys and give you clarity. And then when you're sick of that, move me over. And I'm going to continue to, and now I'm part of a team and contributing in a way that nobody else can.
Yeah. I mean, constantly looking for work is the way we would describe it. And that was something that was reinforced to me. I can't say day one necessarily because I don't really have a memory of day one. I know it occurred at some point, but it's a little hazy, 3 decades in the rearview mirror. But yeah, my first platoon, getting to my first operational element at a SEAL team. If you wanted to get a little bit of a talking to, get into a habit of going to the boss or the person you work for, be like, oh, what do you want me to do today? It's like, no, man. What I want you to do is, even though you have limited experience, limited exposure, limited vision, knowledge, and even thoughts of what this job is, look around and find work. Be a force multiplier. Be a value add. However you want to describe it. I need you to be proactive instead of reactive is essentially what I'm saying. And at a small unit level, oof, man, that is where the magic can happen. And that's how you can take a small group of people and do things or accomplish things that much larger groups of people, probably because of the nature of them having so many people and the bureaucracy involved in that, are unable to do. You're far more nimble. You can make tighter turns. And obviously, I'm talking, slightly hypothetically and,
Yeah.
in a little bit more grandiose terms or in terms, but it's that maneuverability and nimbleness that oftentimes makes the difference.
One of the differences I could make was I could communicate in any direction. So whatever, we'll say the team is in need of something or they don't have or whatever that is, it wouldn't be you guys saying it. I could say that at a level or 2 or 3 or 4 up above, and I could say, "I've noticed this thing," and I had a way of saying it where that little problem got fixed. And a lot of times that problem was more bureaucracy was putting on you guys. Like, "You're gonna have to," and I'm saying you guys, just in the example, it could be any unit. And, like, I'll give you an example that has nothing to do with SEALs. We were out in the area, we're having some real progress, and we were communicating in a way that was really impactful. And so the higher unit said, "Hey, take a PSYOPs team." And the boss is like, "No, thanks. We don't want them out there." "No, no, they're ordered out there." And he's like, "No, thanks." And so we got a PSYOPs team turned around and because they were going to make us go backwards because they weren't at the
Mhm.
level we were playing at in that arena. PSYOP, they're great, but we were ahead of their game and we didn't need to regress. And so that kind of thing. But that message, I helped communicate that above. And like, we're not doing what that is. We're doing this up here. And we were able to negotiate that because I could message in a way that the team couldn't or the platoon couldn't or whatever it is. And there's all these tools that we all bring, but again, that concert to find the points where you can push and leverage things, it's a real there's real dexterity required and it takes seasoning to do that.
Yeah, I agree. It takes time. And guess what? We've already talked about this hard work.
Hard work. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just the way around that part.
Trust me, I've
Yeah,
looked for the hack. Let me just spoiler alert for everyone. I have tried
yeah,
to find it. I have
yeah,
tried to find the hack to hard work. If I had found it, I would tell you.
yeah. This is where like the AI thing kind of comes in. Are you busy? Are you productive? Or should you just like I don't need Google to or whatever, read my email and summarize it for me. It's a 2-line email. I'm just going to
Mhm.
read it. And then you and I were interacting. I was on the move trying to get here to start this thing. I don't need any AI for that interaction. Matter of fact, the less of
Yeah.
that, the better. Because just if I tell you stand by, you're just going to stand by because you know that. And we don't need to, we can communicate. And having never known each other, we can communicate clearly like that. We can put a lot of things between us and B as we're trying to A to B things that don't need to be there.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's a tool. I am probably a late adopter to AI as well, mostly because I don't understand it well. To me, AI is still the documentary The Terminator, which is unfortunately the direction I think we're accidentally heading, and we're going to be working for robots for our daily water ration. But I can see the utility of it, but you watch people try to AI their entire life and it doesn't work because what they're missing is the hard work that they are still going to have to do. Now, having said that, it's an amazing tool. Like if you're a
It
graphic
is.
designer, right? Or uh, I mean, I'm probably an accountant, or I own a business, the coffee shop, as an example. Yeah, there are some AI tools that I can really help use for
Right.
year-end bookkeeping and things like that. But that doesn't mean that I can not be worried about my hiring process. It doesn't mean that I cannot pay attention to daily margin and profit and headcount and labor cost percentages and all of those things and making sure that we have the right product. You could use AI to track your product that's being sold versus the inventory you have.
Right.
That's a great thing, right? But somebody still on top of that is going to need to be able to order. There's a management team that's associated with that. So I look at it as an augmenting tool, but just like any tool, I guess you could try to play golf with a framing hammer if you want to,
Yeah.
right? If you don't use the
Right.
tool for what it's designed for, it's not going to be as effective
Yeah.
as you want it to be.
And if you had a new freshly graduated, SEAL guy, it takes some time to team him up. You wouldn't say, "I need you to go set up a targeting package," and,
Yeah, they
you might have
couldn't.
him try. Yeah, or an
Yeah.
op order or any of these things, especially in the style of that unit. Yes, they're all supposed to be the same, but we all know. And so when you have something like an AI tool that works at a intern level, you have to accept that, hey, it's gonna take some mentoring to maybe get this thing to give me the right advice. Or again, or I just write the 5-paragraph op order myself.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, it seems to be amazing. It's evolving faster than the human brain is for sure. So I don't actually know what trajectory we're on with this or what it's going to look like in the long term. And like I said, I'll use it because I'm a one person show as well. Like I handle my own emails, I write them, I do my own social media, book all the guests for the podcast. Like the vast majority of the stuff I do myself. And then as things grew, the guy who sits in the room with me, his name is Michael. I let him call himself the producer, even though the only thing he produces is subpar work. And he's actually fantastic. I just try to remind him of that every day. I'm trying to forge him into one of the blades behind me. And there's a heat cycle with that. It's hot and cold, right? You got to hammer on the steel to make it hard.
Yeah.
But so I offloaded some of the physical tasks to him. And he uses systems and things like that as well too. But it's just the two people communicating. How much of that I could waste hours and days of my life trying to figure out a way to AI that to be more efficient, or we could just focus on the baseline communication skills between humans, laying out a clear, for lack of a better term, that you and I will understand and other people may not, commander's intent, right? Yeah. Which could be you could call that whatever, a mission business statement or whatever you would want to inside of the civilian world. But articulating that in clear and concise language, making sure people know their jobs, holding yourself accountable to the people that work for you to make sure that they have the tools, the education, the skill set necessary to do their jobs, and that they understand what their jobs are. And you can just follow that all the way down. To me, the human aspect of it, I enjoy more, but also maybe you and I are dinosaurs and that will change in the future. I don't think so, though.
Yeah. Man, yeah, that's all of that, what you just said. And I was just thinking about the commander's intent. And then I was thinking about the river that unloads all that junk out into the ocean in Santa Cruz. The commander might be like, is that a fridge in the river? How'd that get there? And everybody immediately writes down, how did the fridge get in the river? But it's just a passing fancy. And so you also have to sort out like what actually matters. It's like, is that a curiosity or is that a tasking? And maybe it's both. Who knows? But you can get distracted by a lot of stuff when really what you need to do is go out and do the damn job every day. I wanted to ask you this because there's a dark side to all the stuff that we have to deal with. I'm someone that people call like, hey, my friend's a veteran, he's in trouble. Hey, this guy from our unit killed himself. Hey, and I get this a lot because I've dealt with a lot of these things. It's also true that I don't know that many SEALs that retire without being medically retired. A lot of you guys don't do 20. It's just not a job that is conducive to long-term success. I know a lot of special operators that can't leave it behind either, and they end up selling their lives, their time to do, I don't know, sniper missions in the Horn of Africa or whatever. And all that work needs to be, no judgment against that, but we do a lot of hard things and we struggle to turn that off. I'll give you an example and then I'll shut up. I know a guy, he's a Green Beret, lives in Colorado, and he's like, if I don't knock it off, I'm going to cut down every tree in my property because I can't just sit down and just be a dude, and we're always trying to measure up, I guess, or some form of that. What does old Andy say to young Andy in terms of the physical damage, the divorces, the alcoholism, all these problems that we tend to gather in our world, the death that comes, that's not immediately related to how do we get better at dealing with that, man?
It's not a hard question to answer. You check under the hood before the lights on the dashboard start blinking at you. You don't have to wait until like a tire is coming off your car before you call a mechanic or go into a shop to make sure things are functioning the way that they should be. The career field asks very bizarre things of a very small subsect of a subpopulation of people who even inside of the military experience that type of job. And the jury has been out for a really long time on the consequences that exposure to those types of environments, whether they be environmental or stress, the combination of the two, the damage associated with war, those are very real things. And for somebody to think that they're just going to navigate through that and at the end of their career, they're just going to go ahead and tie a bow on it and start dealing with it then, I mean, okay, I'm sure there's some outlier examples of where that actually works, but how about we just act like adults and understand that the occupation is very unique in many different ways, and we treat this, prophylactically as opposed to treating a crisis on the tail end. Maybe recognize how the military is, or at least when I was in, and its exposure to alcohol, that type of culture, the long-term effect, the long tail on that it can have for individuals and families and communities, isolation. All of those things, and a constant reminder that what you do is not who you are. It's just the job. And I don't care, in the teams, the person who has served the longest is called the bullfrog. Well, guess what? That name has rotated many times over time, because at some point in time, you have to hang your uniform up. If you're not prepared for that, if you haven't put the work in prior, you're going to struggle on the tail end of that journey. And that's not anybody's fault but your own.
Yeah, man. Back to doing the work, right? That's where it's at. Yeah. It's yeah. I mean, you're in that world, you're of that world, and if you want to stay in that world, but there is divorce, how do you avoid that? Like, it's almost inevitable, but you can work and say, well, I'm going to be the exception, and here's the path that I'm choosing to do that, whatever it is. You're not going to avoid deployments, or maybe you do. Maybe you don't go out and you don't go to the tip. You're just the spear, and there's nothing wrong, or you're the spearhead, and you help run teams or whatever it is. But
for as many examples there are of the divorce, there's many examples there are, and the divorce rate is substantially higher. But let's focus on the quarter of families that make it, as opposed to the 75% that don't in special operations. There is a path, right? Yes, it's a unique job. Yes, is it probably suited better for a single young man's game? Probably. Yeah. Is that a fulfilling and enriching life, though, in the long term? I don't know. It can be done.
Yeah. Does it need to be expanded? Do we need to get from 25% to 30% in terms of sustainable marriages? And I'm just picking that category, but whatever.
I don't know. I mean, marriages are such a unique thing. I mean, it's like the age that you got married, the person that you grow into, is that parallel, or in direct opposition to the person that you are married to. Life circumstances, I bet the divorce rate in the SEAL community was much lower when it was non-GWAT era versus the GWAT era. Maybe not much lower, but I guarantee it was a lower percentage. So, I mean, there's too many variables in there to necessarily say. But what I will say is, I don't think there's any downside to the military infrastructure focusing a little bit more on the holistic nature of the family.
Yeah. And then the length of careers. Do you see a problem there, or is that just the nature of the beast? I mean, high-end performers, physical performers are going to break. They're just going to happen. And then you put people shooting back at them, it's going to be a lot. So is that something that we can improve? Is it a problem even? What do you think?
I mean, I think the community is always trying to improve via evolving. I mean, I look at the strength and conditioning protocols and recovery protocols and everything from journaling to mental health. And so they are trying to stay at the front leading edge of not only performance in the battlefield, but performance off the battlefield, because the two are intrinsically tied. Right. But as far as the length of the career, I mean, there's so much of this that is luck too. I mean, being unlucky can really shorten your career. And I don't know a system that changes that. It's, again, the job is done by so few. That is when you go into, there's the price versus the cost. The price is very easy to pay. You sign the enlistment documents, you realize what it is you're giving away in the hopes of getting what you want to get out of it. And the cost is what comes from that job and the rest of your life having to deal with those things. And I hope that everybody goes into it both eyes open. I mean, I had no idea that 9/11 was going to happen 5 years after I joined. And I'm still responsible for my choice of going in, right? And the cost is still on me to bear. But I don't think you can do the job they asked us to do and come out the same person. Having said that, I do think you can come out a better version of who you are. Stress, post-traumatic stress, these are not bad things. They're body's natural reaction. I think there should be a lot more emphasis on post-traumatic growth than post-traumatic stress.
Yeah. I mean, I have PTSD. It's pretty bad for me, but I've worked on trying to route it into other things and to calm myself down and realize that my body chemically responds a different way. And it took a lot to get to where I'm at now. And it was pretty unstable for a long time. Not an easy path.
It sounds like you're describing hard work. That's weird.
Well, there's that too, right?
Hard work doesn't have to be manual labor. People go to counselors and therapists and they're like, okay, so after this hour, like I'm going to talk to him for an hour and it's going to be all good. But like, no, dude. That's when the hard work begins. That's when your homework and framework and self-assessment and objectivity is going to kick in, and it's going to suck. And they're like, but I'm only going for an hour, right? Like, okay, it's a long conversation.
Yeah. I mean, like, look how hard you work at jujitsu or shooting your pistol or whatever it is. Are you working that hard on your mental well-being? No, I don't want to go to group therapy.
No.
Well, then find something else. one of the big difference makers for me was my therapist said, "Hey, Pete, you're relentless and you've done it. You've done a great job. You are a hard ass. You can do. I want you to take a nap every day." 'Cause in my family, we're nappers. She's like, "Yeah, just
Mhm.
make it. I'm prescribing you a nap." And what a difference. She informed me, one, like, lighten up a little bit, dude. You're doing it. You've already done it. You are incredible. And I'm like, okay, I can believe that, right? If maybe. And then also just go a little easier on yourself. I would just always push, push, push. I'm the guy cutting down trees all the goddamn time. So I got better at that. I want to ask you this last question, and then I'll leave you alone. But when you transition over to running a coffee shop, it must be that sometimes you look around and be like, I cannot believe I am in this world compared to this old world that I was in before. And you must learn so many new lessons because you've got a completely different life when you have this other way of living. Yes, the SEAL Andy is there at all times, but there's also this new version, and a pretty quick here, if not already. This version is going to be the bullfrog of your world, and
Yeah.
that guy will be further and further in the past.
I don't actually think about my old job that much, to be honest with you, unless we're sitting down having conversations with people or it naturally comes up.
Right.
I like to live in the here and now.
Yeah.
My kids are growing up. I got 2 in their 20s and 1 in their late teens. I really enjoy spending time with my wife. I love being outside, enjoying everything that Montana has to offer. I don't spend much time in the rearview mirror, man.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. What have you learned by owning the coffee shop, though? Like, what kind of lessons come to you that wouldn't have come to you otherwise?
Civilian leadership is way harder than military leadership.
Okay.
When you have people who've been through a crucible and are contractually obligated to do what you ask them to do, and they're completely aligned because of a mission and a vision, and they're bought in on everything that you were there for, that's pretty easy. When you have 40 employees and the average age is 19 and most of them are young women, stand the fuck by.
I love it.
Can't treat them the same
Yeah.
way you can a young military person, I tell you that much.
One thing that I've learned is, like, you can say all these things, like, here's what we're going to do, and you have to do this. And then I go, or not, like,
Totally. Yeah.
You always have
It's tough.
time until you don't.
Yeah. No, it's tough, but I enjoy the challenge. I actually really
Yeah.
enjoy the challenge. It's leadership principles are easy. Leadership in real life is hard.
You know what's fun is reading Drownproof. Here it is, everybody. And there's the link down below. And let me tell you something. This is what I always say. And I always say this, Andy, it's 100% true. And I mean this for everybody. I say it because these things are true. Reading books is fun. Buy 2, buddy read. And if you start a book club, I'm going to commit you right now. You ready? This guy right here, he's going to talk at your book club. He's going to talk to you because he wants you to read this. He wants you to get lessons. Books make great gifts, everybody. I've been enjoying reading this. There's so much that I relate to. And a lot of our conversation has been kind of how I relate to what you're talking about, because we've seen and done these things. So when you see these tips, everybody, a lot of this stuff is the same stuff that I'm saying, because we've lived in this similar world and come out with similar lessons. So get Drownproof. It's in pre-sales now, but you can get yourself one, and once a couple more weeks, it'll be out. And here it is right here. And look, Joe Rogan says it's good, so you know it's good. Anything in closing before I wrap it? Everybody go get this book. It's in the remarks. Go get it.
Anything in closing? If you find the book, I just hope that it helps you navigate a situation in your life. That is truly my hope for doing this. It was the reason behind it. I don't care about the economic aspect of it, if it sells well, if it doesn't. If I get some messages from people who are like, hey, I found your book at a difficult time in my life and it helped me get through that, I could not be more fulfilled than that.
I'm 100%. That is what's in this book, you guys. 100%. All right. Well, listen, I'll say goodbye to you in a second off mic. Everybody else, I will see you all later on. I think we're going to release another show in a little while, so you'll see that. And have a great weekend, everybody. Look out for one another. Get out in front of any kind of danger or trouble. Call folks. Go out and eat with dinner with folks. Go get coffee. Have nightcaps. Be with each other, because you don't want to wait until it's too late. People are too fucked up. Do the hard work. Get things done. All right, Andy. I'll see you in a second. Everybody else, bye-bye.
Sounds good.